This idea that tax cuts would stimulate on the demand side, as you say, would only work premised against confidence. And if your average person doesn't have the confidence to go out and spend the extra money that's coming their way, you're not going to get the boost that you're looking for, are you?
Well, you know what? But you have a much greater chance of them spending the money that they get in a tax cut than for them to go out and borrow money and pay 8% in investing. You know, the whole thing is built on confidence. Look, in 1981, we had a recession and unemployment equal, if not greater in magnitude, to what we have right now. We took the exact opposite course. We limited government growth, we limited regulations, and we provided tax cuts. What was the outcome of that? 25 years of unprecedented global economic growth, and that's just undeniable. Right. I mean, if we want to ignore history and what's worked, that's fine.
Let me address that. Let me go back to Marco Pietropoli. Marco, so far as this unprecedented stint of growth is concerned, this quarter century, isn't that really very much where the problem lies? That this was historically the biggest financial bubble there has ever been, and it was unsustainable. It has now burst, and what governments are in effect trying to do is trying to put a bubble back together. Completely untenable, isn't it?
I totally agree. I totally agree. What we have is a situation where we've had this huge overconsumption based on this huge ballooning amount of credit that may never be repaid, and therefore we're going to have a significant slowdown in demand if you take out a lot of the credit. We're not going to go back to the credit expansion that we had before. We've had a ballooning asset prices. We've had overconsumption. We have to step back, we have to go through the pain and come out the other side. What we're simply doing is dragging this out in an absolutely mad way, because what we're doing by printing money is destroying the value of money. And if we get to the point where money is not worth anything anymore and go down the Zimbabwe route, then what happens? What happens if we have to carry on printing money because the level of government debt becomes unsustainable? These are fundamental questions. Let's face it, most of the European countries, most of the developing countries have a system of full welfare state. Therefore, by definition, there is automatic fiscal stimulus when the economy turns down. There's more welfare that needs to pay out and less tax that's coming in. So therefore, overall government spending in relation to the level of GDP automatically increases, and it has to be sustainable. Otherwise you get to the point where money is not worth anything anymore.
Mr. Pietropoli, isn't yes, please, yes, go ahead, Roland Lamore. Yeah, go ahead. Okay,
I'm sorry, Marco, I didn't mean to cut you off. Look at the last 25 years' growth in the U.S. and Europe. I doubt it's exceeded 3.5%. I hardly find that to be a bubble, okay? Not by any means at all. We can't be afraid of success. Let's start right there. Now, in terms of printing money, Marco has an excellent point there. We are printing tons of money. But you know what? Inflation is not supply of money. It's how much money is in circulation. Look at Japan. In 1990, they started printing money. Over 12 years, they set the record in government debt. I think it's something like 200% of GDP or whatever. Look at all the yen that's out there, but nobody is spending it. It's not about how much you print. It's how much that's in circulation. What is the velocity of the money? Okay, so you really need to look at the real problem here, and that is the money is not being used. You have financial deleveraging. People are in companies. They're not spending money. They're paying down debt. And the more they do, the more prices go down and the more you have a deflationary problem. Inflation is much easier to fix than deflation. We see that. We see that in the 1930s in the United States, in the Great Depression. We see it in 1990, 12 years of deflation in Japan. I mean, that was the world's second largest economy. And it still hasn't overcome it. Their recovery came 12 years later, and it's been anemic at best. Now look at them. They're sliding right back. Don't worry about the money we print. Worry about the money that we have circulating in the economy. You know, we can fix the inflation problem. We have trouble fixing the deflation problem.
All right. Let's look at what these G20 finance ministers are doing in Horsham. Lovely bit of the world. I know it rather well. And leafy and tranquil and, you know, a relative backwater in the suburban belt sprawl of London. Really lovely place, but are they going to get the peace of mind that they need? Are they going to be able to concentrate their minds to actually tackle the issues? And is there really enough commonality, Marco, to bring them together? And I'm thinking here particularly about China. What does China's business cycle and economic development have in common with the more advanced capitalist economies that would make them protect those economies, support those economies, back those economies with the vast amount of foreign exchange reserves that they have at their disposal?
Well, China's approaching this in a far better way. Firstly, they actually have got some reserves. They have put some money aside in the good times, and therefore they're in a position to actually provide fiscal stimulus without having a ballooning government debt. How are they approaching it? I think that the right thing is to do infrastructure projects, but in the short term, of course they're going to get affected. They're going to get affected massively because they rely on the rest of the world to actually buy all their products, and what they need to do is focus on developing internal consumption so that it's not purely reliant on the rest of the world buying their products, and that's really the way to go for China. With regards to the divisions within the G20, well, it's clear that Britain and the US have their agenda and are going down the route of significant fiscal stimulus, of bailing out everybody in sight. The Europeans are somewhat more cautious. I think that they're looking at already in many different countries fairly high level of government debt as it is, and they're looking at actually how sustainable is all of this moving forward, but also looking at securing the value of the euro and the value of their currencies moving forward. Now, of course, there's all sorts of issues as well in Eastern Europe. There's countries there that will need a bailout, and the Europeans are going to have to help on that side of things. So I think the Europeans are approaching it on the basis that there is a limit to what can be done. The Brits and the Americans are simply saying that there is no limit to the fiscal stimulus that can be pumped into the system.
All right,